think I take one bite of my pizza and just fall asleep at the table. The people at Little Caesars tried to wake me up for a while. They're like, we don't want to call the cops on this kid. It's too sad. Let's just wake him up and he'll leave.
And by the kid, you're almost fucking 30. All right, welcome back to Drop a Pin. Today, we have a very special treat in store for you because we have some really tales from the vault for you.
The lost years.
The lost year of Donnie. I think anybody that's been a fan of Barstool for the last really 8 years, I guess, at this point, knows about your trips to Europe. They know about your trips living in China. Many don't know that you spent a lot of your time in your formative years near the University of Clemson.
Yeah, the 2 years before I started working at Barstool, I was living in Clemson, South Carolina. Was down there for 2 football seasons. Both seasons, they won the national championship. So it was a great time for Clemson. It was a bad time for me.
Who was the quarterback?
Deshaun Watson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was, I think, my personal rock bottom.
Your bad time wasn't because of Deshaun Watson. We need to get
we need
to get out in front of that.
No, it had nothing to do with Deshaun. Actually, Deshaun was responsible for most of the funnest times I had down in Clemson.
Okay.
Because I had never experienced college football before living in Clemson. I grew up in Massachusetts. We don't really care about that. I went to Tufts University, where the football team went defeated for 3 seasons in a row. Which
really?
That is not while I was there. That was, I mean, they were very bad when I was there. But after I left, 3 seasons in a row, didn't win a single game. So had never experienced college football. So that part of this story was electric. Being able to go to those games, being able to tailgate down in Death Valley was awesome. But other than that, it was the rock bottom of my life. And, you know, in the scheme of things, a lot of people have worse rock bottoms. So I'm grateful for that. But this was not a pleasant time in my life. I think pathetic might be the best word to describe it.
So how did you end up in South Carolina?
While living in Shanghai, I started a business called Susie Fanwear. Half suit, half jersey, all class. Mm-hmm. And there was a spot in China called the Fabric Market where you could go in and get whatever you want made.
Oh, yeah. I remember you talking about this place. Yeah.
I always used to wear a Celtics jersey in all of my videos. And my friend had the idea, what if you made like a green suit jacket that had the name and number on the back like a jersey? So I made a Larry Bird Susie, the first one of its kind, and people loved it. People went nuts for it. I was wearing it in my Manny Pacquiao vid where I snuck into the ring with him at his fight in Macau. And I had people hit me up all the time being like, I want a Lakers Susie. I want a New York Giants Susie. And so I just started making them. Completely illegal because I didn't have the licensing to these teams. But you go into the Fabric Market and you say, hey, I want this logo on the front. I want so-and-so's name and number on the back in this color scheme. And they could do it. And people thought it was the coolest thing they had ever seen. A lot of people have since, I think, tried to rip it off, and you've actually like seen some people wearing those at games or on draft day. But it was huge. It was revolutionary. And so for a while, I was just making them completely underground, illegal. And at that time in China, I didn't have a career of any sorts. I was having a lot of fun in China, but I didn't have anything I was doing that was sustainable long term. I wasn't making any money off of my videos. And I was like, at some point, I'm going to need a real job. And I was like, maybe I could turn this Susie thing into a legit business. Mm-hmm. But then I looked into it, and getting the licensing for the NBA, the NFL, the NHL was very expensive. I think for the NFL, you have to guarantee them that they'll be making like $100K in royalties every year, or you just need to be paying them $100K per year to have the license. But someone was like, you should look into colleges, because colleges you can do one by one. So you can get the licensing for just one college and then legally sell Susies of that school. And Clemson was getting really good at the time. And it was actually like a male cheerleader on the team reached out to me, and he was like, you should really think of applying for the Clemson license. The idea would work so well here. We have fanatic fans. They like getting dressed up for games. And so I was like, all right, let's make this our test run. And so it's a huge application process, but I applied for the license and I got it. And at this point, I'm still living in China, and it was me and a friend working on the business. And he was like, we're going to need boots on the ground to get the word out about Susie's. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'll go down there for a season. I'll wear it to all the games and tailgates. I'll spread the word.
See, I don't think many people do that. I don't think many people who are living that far. Shit. I don't think people that are living in Chicago have an idea about what's going on in Clemson. And it's like, I'm going to make the move there because I believe in this jersey.
It was not a jersey.
Oh, not
It was a Susie.
Susie, sorry. Yeah. Susie. My apologies.
God damn it.
Fuck.
Yeah. And, oh, man. So, yeah, and I thought one other friend was going to move down with me. That made the decision easier. At the last minute, he had to back out. He was like, I need to get a real job, man. Yeah. I can't stake my future on this Susie business. And so I moved to Clemson. I didn't even know where Clemson was on the map at the time. It is in western South Carolina.
Is it by Greenboro?
Greenville. Very close to Greenville. I moved down there. I didn't even have a car at the time. So I was like, I got to find some place close to downtown Clemson, which is...
And that's not like living in Manhattan or Chicago and getting around on transit.
Most of the roads don't even have sidewalks.
Yeah.
But, oh my, I cannot believe I did this. So I moved down there, and I'll tell you what, I had more culture shock moving from Shanghai to Clemson than I did moving from Massachusetts to Shanghai.
Really?
Yeah, way more. I had never spent much time down south at all. And
probably the first time you've been on the side of the road and seen boiled peanuts.
Yeah. It was my first time seeing Cookout.
Yeah.
Which I was so broke at the time. I was eating a lot of Cookout, gained a lot of weight when I was living in Clemson.
So you probably did a lot of Cookout, a lot of Bojangles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the blueberry biscuit.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good. Sometimes their biscuits are a little too dry for me. So I moved down and I found a place to live. Apparently it was in like the hood of Clemson, but it was a 15-minute walk downtown to campus. And not having a car, I was like, that works for me. I think I was paying $300 a month in rent. And I was sharing the place with 2 foreign exchange students from Columbia, maybe. And I needed a job because I was like, any money I make from selling Susie's is going to have to go back into the business. Now, I had a little money to start with because my friend entered us into a business plan competition. And we won somehow. And the prize was $10,000.
Shit, that's a lot of Susie's.
Yeah, so I had $10,000 in the bank in which to get this business off the ground. But I was like, I need to be paying for my own rent, my own food. So I got a job at an Asian Mexican fusion place that had just opened called the Kung Fu Cantina. Now,
that's the most Clemson restaurant.
The Kung Fu Cantina, man. And I was like, I remember I went in for the job. I was like, I don't really have any experience working in a kitchen, working at a bar, but I did live in China.
Yeah,
for 6 years.
And I've eaten Mexican food.
And I love tacos. He was like, boom, you're hired. So that was my life. Just walking into town, working at this bar, and then going to games on the weekends, trying to make friends, trying to get the word out about Susie's. Now, like the order of Clemson Susie's hadn't even arrived yet. So I was able to make some custom ones, but I was walking into stores there trying to get these actual sold in stores. And the thing that sucked about college Susie's is that everybody who wanted a Susie from me wanted it for a specific player. But but in colleges, you weren't allowed to do that. So the jackets just had to say Tigers and then number 1 on the back, which was not nearly as cool as the Susie's I had.
Yeah, you want to be like number 17, Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. And in order to get the price down to a point that college kids could afford, I had to mass produce them. So before I was just making every Susie custom. You could design it your own. That was cool. People loved it.
What was the price point?
I mean, at first, I was getting these made in a sweatshop in China. It was in the attic of this.
The attic of a sweatshop.
Well, no,
the sweatiest part of a sweatshop.
It was just like the attic of someone's home that lived near the fabric market. And
you're a good guy, but you owe those kids an apology.
It was not kids. It was a husband and wife and their friend.
Okay,
and
fuck them then, yeah.
I would go into the attic, and it was so short I had to bend down to get in there. That's where I was making all the custom Suzies. I eventually found a factory that could mass produce, and I started with just 100. And I was like, I'm going to get these sold in stores. It was a very hard business to do because with suit jackets, you can't just do small, medium, large, XL.
Right.
So I just had to make like 4 sizes that I hoped would fit people. I finally got them into one store down there. I don't think they sold that well. Those were sold for around $150 or maybe $160.
It's not too bad.
The custom ones I was selling around that price too, just because they were being made in that sweatshop of sorts. I could really get the price down.
Didn't you put it out here too whenever you first started at Barstool that if we wanted any jerseys to let you know that you still had the hookups?
Yes. Yep. I sent that out. And I also, while I was trying to get the word out about Suzies, I made one for Big Cat. I made him a Blackhawk Suzie.
Okay.
And I made Dave a Red Sox Suzie. That was my first time meeting Dave. I showed up at the Milton office because I had sent him a DM. I was like, do you want a Red Sox version of these? And he was like, yeah, that'd be sick. I was super nervous. I knock on the door. Feidelberg answers. I was like, hey, I'm here to drop this off for Dave. He gets Dave. Dave walks down and he tries it on and he just goes, the sleeves are too short. And I was like, oh, sorry. And he was like, all right, cool. And then I left.
Damn.
Yeah, I didn't feel great after that.
At least it was Feidelberg and not Pirate Simon that answered the door. Do you remember him?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
I was hanging out with him at the Barstool Awards.
Oh, nice.
He seems to be doing pretty well for himself.
Yeah.
Now, back to Clemson. Things weren't going so hot for me. I wasn't great at my job at the Kung Fu Cantina, so I was working in the kitchen.
Why? What happened?
Well, no, just
Not good at rolling the burrito?
I guess I was too slow and I was eating too much of the food.
Yeah.
Like I would just experiment making like cool tacos and just be eating them myself. And I don't think I was fast enough. Eventually they moved me to the bar. I don't think I was fast enough there. And I would forget to do things like turn on the music in the bar. But
I love the idea that at this point you have a degree from one of the best universities in the world. And
Yes.
you're like, man, I'm really struggling at this Asian taco fusion spot.
I was actually having a lot of fun
Your
working
parents
there.
are probably like, what in the fuck, man?
What the fuck? And I was having fun. I thought I was doing a good job. Now, the founder of the place,
I like that you had so much pride in it.
Yes.
You wanted it to do well.
it was fun, dude. I mean, Asian-themed tacos, that's right up my alley.
It really is. Any ragoons there?
They didn't have rangoons,
No?
unfortunately. We had fried Oreos. So the restaurant was not doing well at all. And the founder was getting scared. So he kept on running through new managers, new chefs. And finally, he put one of my first friends in Clemson and made that guy the manager of the place. And he's the reason that I never got fired. Because he told me, he was like, hey, man, the founder called me into the back room and he was like,
Not because you're really smart, but because you know a guy.
he goes, I'm sorry, like everybody at the restaurant likes him, but like I think we're gonna have to fire this dude. and Mike was like, don't worry, I'll talk some sense into him. And Mike saved my job. He was like, he'll get better.
We need to get Mike on the pod.
He was one of my first friends there. And at one point he found out about my whole YouTube career in China. And this was probably one of my saddest days there. He was like, dude, I was watching your videos all last night. Why the fuck are you here working at this restaurant? And it gets worse. We would host frat parties at the spot and frat kids would
I love this place.
frat kids at Clemson would recognize me from my China videos.
Really?
Because I had been making videos for a good 5 years in China, not for Barstool, but 4 of those vids had been shared on Barstool. Mm-hmm. And they'd be like, I'd be serving them a drink and they'd be like, wait, weren't you that China, that YouTuber in China?
Yeah.
And I would just put my head down and be like, yeah, that was me.
I hit a rough patch.
Yeah, it was like that. There was someone who used to be an actor on The Cosby Show, and he was recognized working at an In-N-Out or something. And people are
Yeah.
like, dude, this actor from The Cosby Show now works at a fast food restaurant.
And then he got back into acting because of that. Like there was a story, like he got invited to like the Golden Globes that year or something, and then he got his next acting job.
Oh, great. Hey.
I think was it Family Matters?
Yeah, maybe he was on Family Matters.
Yeah.
Well, that's what started motivating me, that I was like, maybe this Susie thing's not going to work out. And my true love is making videos, making content and travel. So yeah, I started to realize that. And the Susie business only got worse. When we first received our shipment of 100 jackets, they were the wrong orange. They were like Tennessee orange, or almost maybe like a burnt orange, but they weren't Clemson orange. So I was like, these.
And that's a huge deal for that school, right?
Having the right Clemson orange is a huge deal. And I remember being so depressed when I got the first sample, and I was like, oh no. That I went in my room and I was drinking like barefoot wine alone. And there was a Pats playoff game that night. And I did have a Pats Susie. So I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go watch the Pats, drink my sorrows away. So I go to a bar in downtown Clemson. The Pats lose. And so I start drinking heavier and heavier. And then eventually I decided to walk home. Now, I'd only been living in Clemson for a month at that point, but I thought I knew how to get home. But on the walk back, there's a fork in the road. And I was so drunk, I took the wrong fork. And I keep on walking, and I'm like, wait, shouldn't my house be here? And I'm hammered. I'm blackout drunk at this point.
Yeah.
But I had like the walk ingrained in my mind. So I'm just wandering around, can't find the place. Eventually I was like, I need to lie down. And I fell asleep on someone's front porch wearing a Tom Brady Susie. I wake up in the drunk tank.
Yeah. As one does. Surrounded by like 10 other college kids. I remember the cops came in and gave us McDonald's breakfast, which was cool. Yeah, that's a thing they do in Clemson. They always bring McDonald's breakfast into the drunk tank. What?
And I was taken out of the cell. My mugshot was taken, and they were like, yeah, like the people who lived in that house called the cops, and we found you passed out on the porch and just like brought you into the cop car and dropped you off here.
Your mugshot absolutely needs to be on the thumbnail for this episode.
Well, here's the thing. A couple days later, I went to the police department and asked for my thumbnail, and they told me to fuck off. I asked for my mugshot, and they told me to fuck off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which I think legally they like have to give you.
Yeah, it's Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah.
You should be able to find it anyways. So you could do a record search in that area, and it should be, if you were booked in, it should be there.
Well, here's the thing. I was able to get the charges off my record eventually because they told me it was a misdemeanor. Yeah.
What did they view it as, like?
I guess in Clemson, public drunk. It was a drunken public or a public intoxication, and it was
misdemeanor. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a misdemeanor, and they were like, yeah, this. I guess like if you just pay the fine, but it's still going to be on your record for the rest of your life. And at that point, I didn't have a real job. I was like, eventually, I might have to get a real job. I don't want that on my record.
Here doesn't necessarily matter, but at that point, you didn't know here was going to be an option.
I did not. And so they were like, we have this program where if you do community service around town, you can get it off your record. And I was like, that sounds great. You had to be drug tested for 3 months. And I was hit with 40 hours of community service, which I did at the Clemson Fire Department.
Okay.
So for 3 months, I was waking up at 6 a.m. and cleaning the entire fire department, cleaning the fire trucks, mopping the floors.
But if you're going to do community service, that's not a bad spot to do it.
Yeah, I guess.
Better than picking up trash on the side of the road.
Yeah, it was better than that. I didn't have to be out in public, but I'm like 28 at the time, just cleaning the Clemson Fire Department. It was sad, and being drug tested every day. I remember one time I had to go in and pee in a cup, and I just could not pee, and I was using my friend's car to even get to the drug testing center, and he was like, I need my car back. And I was like, dude, I can't piss. Like I need to piss, or else they're just gonna think that I'm faking it because I have been doing drugs.
Yeah.
So I remember frantically running across the street, just chugging water, chugging coffee. Finally, I got some dribbles out. So yeah, I completed the community service. and I got that off my record. Now, that was towards the end of the season. Clemson did win the national championships that year. So I went to some great games that year. I met some friends at the tailgate. They kind of welcomed me into their tailgate.
Mm-hmm.
That part was fun. Every other aspect of my life sucked. Once the summer came around, I was like, I got to get out of here for a while. I'm going to go back to Shanghai on business. It was just to fuck around for a month and see friends. But I did meet with my factories. I went to my sweatshop, made sure everything was going well. And I was at a house party one night there, and I met a girl, and we started chatting. And she was like, oh, I graduated from Clemson, and then I moved out to China to teach. And I was like, I'm living in Clemson right now. That girl later became my wife, but we'll get to that part.
Yeah.
So after a month, I had a blast in Shanghai. I was like, it's time to go back to Clemson. I finally got a car, and I moved out of the hood where I was living. One more story about the hood. I had those two exchange roommates from Columbia. When I went home for Christmas break, I come back, and the door of our place had been knocked down, and it just reeked of smoke. And I was like, what the fuck happened? It turned out my roommate started boiling an egg, forgot he left it boiling, and then just went to Columbia and then just left.
It was still on?
Yeah, it was still on. And then just left Clemson, went home for the holidays as well. And so all the water evaporated, and then the pan caught on fire, and then like our entire house filled with smoke.
Yeah.
And the fire department had to come and break down the door.
All your buddies had to come help you out.
all my buddies had to come. And then
hey, Donnie, how you doing? Yeah, while we're here, you mind giving it a little wash?
I wasn't there. I was home on Christmas break too.
Oh, shit.
So I come home, and like nobody really knew this happened. And then it came out that he was like, oh yeah, like my roommate had a crazy name, maybe Iskander or something. And he was like, sorry, man, like I left an egg boiling and then went to fucking Columbia.
Yeah.
And we got hit with a crazy bill just for the cleaning service to get the smoke smell.
I bet.
To get the smoke smell out.
And the fire department. Sometimes they'll make you pay.
Yeah, the fire department, and to fix the door. And then he was like, I think the fair thing to do here is we should all just split the cost 3 ways. And I was like, no, dude.
How is that fair? Yeah.
I was like, I had nothing to do with this. I'm not paying a cent. Like, you burnt down our house.
Right.
So I think he eventually nutted up and paid for it. But yeah, when I moved back to Clemson, I decided to live somewhere else. And I moved in with someone even older than me who was born and raised in the Clemson area. This was the town over. And he was, for lack of a better word, a redneck. But I like the guy. If he's listened to this pod, I hope he doesn't take offense.
Mm-hmm. I don't think they would. They know.
Yeah. He was a true blue or a true red redneck.
Yeah.
And, had probably a few DUIs. Diehard Clemson fan, though. And that was the thing about living in Clemson.
Egg McMuffins in the drunk take in his day.
Yes. Because at this point, I'm like 29. So if I'm hanging out with Clemson kids, the Clemson students are from all over the country, but I can't be hanging out with them. I would just be the creepy older guy.
You absolutely would, yeah.
And all the people my age that are still living in Clemson are just complete townies.
Mm-hmm.
Born and raised in the deep South, didn't have a lot in common with them, but I became friends with them. And I rented a room in that guy's house with one other redneck who would sometimes, when I was going to bed reading a book, he would come in and show off his gun. He would just be like, dude.
I thought you were going to say cock.
No, he would come in and show off his gun and be like, dude, check it out. And I'd be like, that's cool. I'm trying to go to bed. And they were good guys. I would go to a lot of the Clemson games with them. He would bring me to all the cool tailgates just because he knew Clemson so well. One night I was reading in bed, and then all the electricity goes out in their house. And then one of my roommates runs in the door. 5 minutes later, he's like, I need your help. we run outside. His car's there. It's all banged up, and we have to push it into the garage and then close the garage. It turned out that while drunk driving, he had driven into the telephone pole down the street and taken out all the electricity in our neighborhood.
Oh.
And then he's just hiding in the house, and the cops are driving by trying to figure out what happened. They never found him.
Good for him.
But then he didn't have a car for months, and I was like driving him to his factory job every morning.
See, that's a natural consequence.
Yeah.
He didn't go to jail or get anything like that, but he didn't have a car and had to pay for it.
I had to pay for it too, because I was then having to drop him off at work.
Oh, yeah.
So another season comes. Clemson is incredible again. I went to some away games. I went to a game in Auburn.
So you're probably at Trevor Lawrence's freshman year at this point.
No, I was
Sophomore?
Deshaun Watson's last 2 years, I think.
Okay.
That I was down there for. I'm still working at the Kung Fu Cantina.
Even after you took a month of leave and came back?
Yeah. Because my guy Mike, who was made
I think our first merch should be that logo.
the Kung Fu
Yeah.
Kung Fu Cantina, dude.
Yeah.
Dude, I felt bad because this guy, the founder of it, was a young dude, and he had like a couple really successful restaurants in Athens, Georgia. So they were raking in the money, and he was like, "Oh, this concept in Clemson is going to crush." We were just like maybe 2 minutes further away from all the other Clemson bars, but that was 2 minutes too far for any of the students to walk. So it was not doing well. It was hemorrhaging money. We were firing our chefs like once every 3 months. One chef we found out was living in the restaurant because he was homeless.
This is my favorite place ever.
Yeah, the Kung Fu Cantina. We would throw like sorority parties, and the sorority girls, I remember, would would destroy the women's bathroom.
I bet the drunk videos that came out like on chicks, like at chicks on Instagram.
And at the end of the night, I would have like my life had come to just cleaning women's bathrooms after sorority parties.
Yeah.
And they were disgusting. They would rip the paper towel machine off the wall. There would be tampons on the ground.
Fucking animals.
The female bathroom was always worse than the men's bathroom. But hey, the football action was great. I brought my parents down for their first game. I was also down there when Trump got elected.
Oh, yeah.
So I was not shocked when Trump won at all. Like, my mom's a huge lib. She was like, she went to a Hillary victory party that night, and then everyone just slowly left. I had been living in Clemson for almost a year by then, so I was not really shocked in the slightest.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know a single person that was voting for Hillary. Now, when it came to their Thanksgiving game, their rivalry game, they played South Carolina, and I was like, I got to be down there rocking my Susie. It's the biggest game of the season. I got to get the word out. But I had my high school reunion, my 10-year high school reunion the night before that Friday, and then the game was Saturday at 8 p.m. So I was like, I'll go to my high school reunion, and then I'll take a 5 a.m. flight down to Charlotte, and then from there I'll get to Clemson. I black out at my high school reunion.
As one does. I somehow wake up. Yeah.
I come to on the flight to North Carolina.
Somehow you're back at the cantina.
Yeah, I'm back at the cantina. No, but somehow I was landing like in Charlotte when I finally like sobered up. I was like, how did I manage that? And I was so hungover, had the worst headache of my life that I go to the airport bar afterwards. I needed some hair of the dog. Yeah. And the bartender eventually cuts me off. He was like, dude, where are you flying to? And I was like, I'm not flying anywhere. I'm here. Yeah. I've arrived. He was like, okay, then you need to leave the fucking airport. Yeah. You need to get out of here.
I'm back on community service.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
We'll get to that.
Cart before the horse. Yeah.
We'll get to that. I managed to make it down to Clemson, and the game wasn't until 8:30 at night, but the tailgate started at 8:30 in the morning. So eventually I just start tailgating. And tailgate all day until the game that night. Clemson destroys USC, and my friends are like, let's go out to the bars. And I was like, okay. And at this point, I was losing steam. So I was like, I'm going to take half an Adderall, and that will give me the juice to stay out. I reach in my pocket, and I forgot that a week earlier, a friend had given me a Klonopin, which is an anti-anxiety drug to help you sleep. Yeah. And I reach in my pocket. I accidentally take the Klonopin instead of the Adderall. And I go.
So you're 2 days drunk, got a belly full of Cantina.
Got a belly full of Kung Fu Cantina, and I just took a Klonopin.
Yeah.
And I think I make it to a bar or two, but then I go to Little Caesars for some pizza. I think I take one bite of my pizza and just fall asleep at the table. And to be fair, the people at Little Caesars tried to wake me up for a while. They were like, we don't want to call the cops on this kid. He's not being rambunctious.
And by the kid, you're almost fucking 30.
And I was wearing a Clemson Susie. Yeah. And so hey, I'm sure I got the word out. And I think they spent 10 minutes trying to wake me up. They're like, we don't want to call the cops on this kid. It's too sad. Let's just wake him up and he'll leave. They can't wake me up for 10 minutes. And they're like, all right, now we got to call the cops. Flash forward, back in the drunk tank. Yeah.
Here comes the captain of the fire department. Come get his guy.
We got him back, boys.
They bring you, instead of a McMuffin, you got a super hard-boiled egg that's been in there for about 45 minutes.
The only silver lining to this story...
Sweating.
The only silver lining to this story is that a couple weeks prior, because I was doing everything I could at this point to get out of Clemson, that's when I saw a blog introducing Barstool Idol, finding Barstool's next employee.
Yeah.
I was living in Clemson at the time, but I was like, ooh, I'm already going back to the Northeast for New England. I could also show up and audition for Barstool Idol.
Yeah.
While I'm back, I was like, it's a shot. I have nothing to lose. And I remember applying, and I applied, I think, for my like real name address, but I was like, yeah, I run this channel, Donnie Does China. And they were like, oh yeah, you're that China guy. You can come in and audition for sure. So I had auditioned, and Dave was just like, all right, we already like know who you are. You already have a huge backlog of content. We've shared 5 or 6 of your vids on the website before. You can just have a job.
All your videos are great, but I mean, it's a thumbs up because I've always loved this stuff, but we've just never like figured out exactly what you do.
And I was so pumped that then I just left immediately without...
Yeah, because I was actually in New York at that time because I was living in Texas and came up for Idol to like do interviews with people on the side or whatever.
Yeah.
And I had seen several of your videos and I had wanted to meet you. And I was like, where did Donnie go? And they're like, oh, he already left.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, sick, I got the job, I leave. And then I got back to my hotel and I was like, wait, I never like signed a contract. And so I started sending Dave an email. I was like, so did I really get the job? When should I start? What's the deal? And he didn't respond for a few weeks, but he had verbally given me a job.
Yeah.
And so at the point when I woke up in the drunk tank with another drunken public misdemeanor, I had a verbal job offer by Barstool, but I hadn't signed a contract. So I was like, I should still probably get this off my record, but there wasn't a chance in hell I was doing community service again.
Right.
And so my friend was like, dude, you can just hire a lawyer. It's about $750.
Yeah.
He deals with these cases all the time. He can get it off your record. So I was broke at the time, but I was like $750, 40 hours of my life, I think are worth more than $750.
That's exactly how I view, I mean, not just court cases and stuff, but I view, that's how am I going to hire somebody to clean? Am I going to hire like a handyman to do stuff? Would I pay myself this much an hour to do it? And if the answer is no, then I don't do it.
So that's the route I took. I hired a lawyer. He was able to get it off my record. But then Dave finally got back to me and sent me a contract. And he was like, I kind of pitched him that I was like, I got to get out of Clemson. I'll go back to Shanghai and just start making videos for Barstool and be your foreign correspondent. I pitched a bunch of ideas. I think I did every single one of them. And so on February 1st, 2017, I officially started working at Barstool. I moved back to Shanghai and ended up moving in with that girl I had met the previous summer, who is now my wife.
As a romantic interest at first, or just like roommates because you had like some similarities?
That month, as a romantic interest, because that month I was back in Shanghai, we really hit it off and we're spending every day together. And then when I moved back to Clemson, we were talking on the phone almost every day. So when I moved back, I just
She
directly.
doesn't hear for you a couple hours. He's like back in the tank again.
Yeah.
He's back.
Yes, she was not happy about that. And then when she saw I got the job at Barstool, she was like, "Oh, that's cool," but she was a little sad because she thought that meant I would now be working out of the New York office. And I was like, "No, I'm coming right back to Shanghai." So we moved in together, and that's why, every dark time in your life, you gotta just wait, because maybe some good will come out of it. Clemson's kind of the reason that I met her, because at that house party, that's how we hit it off. She had gone to Clemson. I was living in Clemson at the time. And we stayed in touch when I went back. Eventually got married, still working at Barstool to this day. And
Now you got a kid coming.
Yeah.
A little tiger.
And now we have a kid. So that is my Clemson story. There were times when I was living in that really shitty apartment, very depressed, but thinking like, you know what, one day I'm going to be able to look back on these days and laugh.
And we just did.
And
we just did. Honest to God, that's one of the hardest I've laughed in podcasting.
Nice.
Like for real. Like consistently over the course of the entire story, one of the hardest I've laughed. Also, I don't know if you have a son name picked out, but Clemson would be a fantastic name.
No, I'm not going to do that. I've always wanted to go back to Clemson because we do these trips down there, either with High Noon or another alcohol brand, where they send a couple Barstool employees back. I'm putting my name in the ring. I would love to go back there. I got one little side note to my time in Clemson that's very depressing. I was making so little at the Kung Fu Cantina because college kids don't know how to tip.
Right.
So we would have nights, and it was like $3 alcoholic slushy night. Every kid would pay me exactly $3 without a tip. So without tips, I was just making below minimum wage. I needed some cash because I didn't want to be taking all the money out of the Susie fund.
Right.
So I started donating plasma.
Oh, man.
Have you ever done that? I hope veterans don't have to donate plasma.
I've never had to do it, and I would imagine you're one of the only Tufts graduates to ever do it.
I am 100% the only Tufts grad who donated plasma. If you don't know,
Clemson, North Carolina.
If you don't know, you show up at
because he wasn't making minimum wage at the Kung Fu Cantina.
Oh, rest in peace, the Kung Fu Cantina.
Damn, it's closed.
The Kung Fu Cantina.
You know what we should do?
Went out of business.
We should get Chef Donnie and have a pop-up shop.
Yeah, where we try to make what they made. Hey,
yeah,
dude,
it would be a hit.
Their food was so fucking good, which is why I was bad at the job, because I was just eating so much of it. I stand by the concept. If anyone wants to reopen Kung Fu Cantina, the food was good. Clemson kids just didn't want to walk 2 minutes. And so I would go to this clinic, and plasma is not your blood, but it's the stuff that's in between your blood, in your, So they would inject this giant needle into your arm, and for about 45 minutes, they would just filter out your plasma. And you would donate like a pretty large vial of it. And they would pay you $40 per day that you donated plasma. They did have rules. I think you could only donate plasma at most twice a week. And you'd be exhausted after that. I mean, it takes a lot out of you.
Honest to God, I knew some of these stories a little bit. I had no idea you were almost 30 when this was going on.
Dude, it was so bad.
Like, I thought this was going to be like 21-year-old Wonton fresh out of college.
Yeah. And thankfully, I knew zero people down there, like from my previous life. So I could still go back to Massachusetts, be hanging out with my old friends, and they'd be like, "How's it going in Clemson?" And I'd be like, "Oh, it's sick, man. I'm going to all these going to all these college football games. Clemson's going to win the national championship." But they didn't really know how dark it was. Another roommate I had when I was living in the hood, because eventually the dude who burnt the house down moved out, and this kid moved in who would freestyle rap in his room so loud at all times of the day. I don't even think he was recording it. I think he was just doing it for fun. And that was one thing, but then he just wasn't paying rent either. And that sucked. I was like, the rent's $300 a month. This guy hasn't paid in 2 months. So I'm dealing with that. I think I eventually had to be like, all right, I don't want to have to be your landlord, but you have to move out.
Yeah.
Which sucked. Another silver lining is that the Clemson Susies, which were orange jackets with purple lining, Tigers one on the back, Those never sold well, but I went into the fanciest clothing shop in downtown Clemson. He was like, these are a little too tacky for me, but if you can make me a wool jacket that has a orange satin lining with the Clemson logo on one side and then says Clemson University on the other side, I could sell those.
I bet.
And so I wasn't able to mass produce those, but I went back to my sweatshop, and because then he would
Wake up, kids.
He would talk to all the rich alumni at Clemson, all the Clemson boosters, and be like, "Hey, I can make you this jacket in whatever size you want." He started hooking me up with a bunch of orders, and they could be whatever size. If you want a 46L,
Yeah.
you want a 38R.
I would rock the shit out of a Jaguars teal, nice sports coat.
Yeah, and so for a good year, he was sending me a bunch of orders, even after I had moved back to China. And I would make them for, or maybe around $100. He would sell them for like $500.
Wow.
And these were made in someone's attic in
Yeah.
China. So I don't think, and maybe some of those Clemson boosters are listening to this. It wasn't a sweatshop. It was like there was no child labor involved.
Okay.
But it was made in this like tiny attic in Shanghai, and I think those orders eventually dried up, maybe around COVID. But for a while, I was selling those. The Susie business is now defunct.
Damn.
It no longer exists. I was just so happy to have a job at Barstool. Like I should have turned around and been like, "Hey, Barstool, like, do you want to buy this business off me? Or maybe I could transfer the Clemson license to them." The Clemson license officially expired, unfortunately. I think I still have a trademark on the name Susie, though.
Okay.
Yeah. I tried to patent the idea, and they were like, I don't know if you can patent a design.
I think there is some that you can, but the people you talk to probably know more than me because I just made it up.
Yes, some designs you can. They would just like it'd be kind of hard, like a name and number
And
on
you'd just be
suit
constantly
jacket.
in suit with somebody. Like whenever we had the Saturdays for the boys, and you're just constantly going at little Amazon shops. Never going to work.
So some good came out of it, and those are my lost Clemson years.
All right, well, let's get into some actual facts about the area.
Sure.
All right, so now that we know the best restaurants in the Clemson area, let's get into some of the other facts about the spot.
Yeah, so it's truly a college town. It was a town that developed around the college because it used to be part of Calhoun, a town called Calhoun, and then some land was granted to Calhoun's daughter. I don't know if this is right at all. And they opened up a university there, and then a town just slowly built up around the university, and once it was large enough, it broke off from Calhoun and became the town of Clemson, which today has a population of around 16,000 people.
16?
Yeah, I think so. That's probably larger than you thought.
I think that's way less than I would have thought for a big school like that.
Well, here's the thing. On game day, the population goes from 16,000 to
140.
120,000.
Okay.
Maybe 140 now that like they got so good, and because they were the kings of college football for
a while. Yeah, I think you could have a 10-year stretch where you could say that them and Alabama were the two preeminent programs for sure.
Yeah, and I always loved the story.
And they get 100,000 just in the stadium. Like Death Valley itself has over 100,000 seats. I think it's 100, 110, something like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've always loved the story that Dabo Sweeney, he was homeless at one point.
Was he?
Living in his car. I think he played some at Alabama. It was always his dream to be the coach of Alabama. But obviously, Alabama was all set with a coach. And so he eventually got the job at Clemson, and then Clemson beat Alabama. Like, it was a great story. I think Dabo gets a little more hate now, maybe because Clemson isn't doing as well. But for a while, he was like the most beloved person in college football.
He's not adjusting well to NIL because he's very much an old school, kind of like Saban, but not exactly like Saban, where he wants to get guys out of high school and get them into the program and doesn't want to go like shopping for NIL players, which is basically what you have to do now.
Yeah. But hey, a lot of people want to play at Clemson. Their football facilities are incredible.
They do. I looked it up. I just looked it up. They have 80,000 max capacity for games. That they usually around 81,000 to get in there. And then currently they have 27,000 students that are enrolled per year.
Okay. Now, their football stadium is called Death Valley. Same as LSU. They call their stadium Death Valley. And they're also the Tigers. Which came first, do you think?
I don't know which came first, but I think it's LSU with the bullet is Death Valley. I think it's big time. Like if you polled college football fans and said which one is Death Valley, I think it goes to LSU.
Well, it's not true.
And Clemson doesn't play neck.
Clemson was the original Death Valley.
Yeah.
Because they were dominant back in the day, so they just named it Death Valley. It's where teams go to die. But then in 1959 in the college Super Bowl, LSU won. And then they were like, now we're going to start calling our stadium Death Valley.
Oh, they did it like in a head-to-head matchup.
Yeah. And they were like, we just beat Clemson. Fuck you guys. We're the new Death Valley.
See, I like that. I think nickname battles would be incredible to have. A nickname bowl?
A nickname bowl? Yeah. So you play for your right to call your stadium Death Valley or something.
What other teams are the Tigers? So you have Clemson,
LSU.
LSU.
I think there's a story like behind why Clemson and LSU are both called the Tigers.
Penn State.
Are they?
No, they're the Lions.
Yeah.
Lions.
The Princeton Tigers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both Clemson University and Louisiana State University are called the Tigers because of the names of volunteer companies during the Civil War and the influence of the Princeton Tigers football team. I guess because college football used to just be played amongst the Ivy League schools.
Yeah, them and the service academies.
The service academies and this Indian school called the Carlisle Indians. We could do a podcast on that.
Okay.
It was a school where they would try to civilize Indians. Their words, not mine.
Okay.
And one of the things.
Glad you clarified.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, what are we doing here?
Their words.
A lot of
mine.
Indian dropping on the pod.
They were like, we're going to take Indians and we're going to make them go to the school. We're going to teach them the Bible. We're going to teach them how to read and write. And we're going to teach them how to do all American activities like play football. And they were sick.
Yeah.
The Indian football team ended up beating all these Ivy League schools. And their coach was Pop Warner.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they were dominant. They like invented the forward pass. They invented a bunch of trick plays. They revolutionized the game.
Sweet.
Native Americans. What are some other facts about Clemson that you know?
It was originally a military school.
Oh, all right.
I had no idea that. Started as an all-military school. It remained a military institution until 1955. And many of the traditions from like the cadet uniforms and discipline have shaped the university's history and culture. Thomas Green's Clemson International Connection, which was born in Philadelphia. That guy spent a lot of his time and became an ambassador to Belgium and married the daughter of John Calhoun, who you talked about earlier.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. They have one of the biggest world supercomputers is there.
That is wild.
It's called the Palmetto, after the Palmetto State of South Carolina. I didn't know that. I would have never guessed that.
I did know they have a really good engineering school.
And a creamery. I've actually been to the creamery.
You've been to the Clemson Creamery?
Been there, yep.
What brought you there?
I went on one of those like high noon things that you were talking about with Barstool. I went there. I forget, it might have been me and Glennie Balls or maybe me and Caleb. But we went there, I think, in 2017.
Shit, that was right after I had finally gotten out.
Yeah, maybe it was 16. It was the first year, because that was the first time I really thought I'm old, because I had started in 2016 at Barstool, so I was 34 at the time, and whenever I went on these trips with like Caleb or Glennie or somebody like that to one of the colleges, we went to Old Row in Alabama, and Caleb took me, and there was like some country music star, I think Mike Rice or something, like Chris Rice, some dude, and they were playing, and it was just at Old Row. All these frat guys were coming in and like sorority girls, and I was like, holy shit, these people look like babies. Mm-hmm. I am so old.
Yeah, well, that was me at Clemson. I do know that they rush the field every game, every home game. They rush the field, whether it's a win or a loss.
I don't like that.
I got to rush the field when I was there.
Yeah?
Yeah, that was cool. I mean, hey, I did hang out with some college kids, and they were nice enough to not make me feel like super old and washed.
Yeah.
There's a big lake, Lake Hartwell. It's a nice area of the country. Greenville, that's where I should have lived instead of Clemson. Greenville had a lot of
a church camp there.
Okay, they have a lot of young professionals who at that time were probably also a few years out of college working a job. It's one of the fastest growing cities in the country. It's about a 45-minute to an hour drive from Clemson. I would have met more like-minded people living in Greenville as opposed to Clemson.
Probably so.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to some Getting Cultured. All right, now I'll drop a pin. We're having another segment of Getting Cultured. This time we have the king of the South, none other than the Bayou Zone, Mississippi Zone, Barstool Zone, Mintzy. Welcome to the show, Mintzy.
Thanks for having me. I love the concept. I love Wonton Don knows I'm one of his biggest roadies ever. I love his world traveling content. And I think this is a brilliant idea for a podcast. I really think there's a lot of potential here.
Thanks, Mintzy.
And hey, you're one of the few people at the company besides me and Chaps that can say they have lived in a foreign country.
Yes. Did 6 months in Rosarito, Mexico as an expat after the government banned online poker in 2011. My folks had a lot of problems with me being in Mexico during the middle of a drug war. But it was a good experience. And, I don't know. It was pretty cool living in the Baja area. And
yeah. Maybe we'll have you on for a full episode to really see what your life was like down in Rosarito, Mexico.
It was actually a little more boring than you think because I was so paranoid. Tijuana was right there, but it was kind of unsafe. And the one thing that was really fun was I went to a tequila fest one day. It was like $5 or whatever, the equivalent of $5, all you could drink tequila with the mariachi bands in Rosarito. And I'll just say it, I got more fucked up than Cooter Brown. Okay. I mean, it was the full deal. This was like 2013 me before we got on the clean living. And it was something.
And I'm sure the rest of the time you were just playing online poker.
Yeah, there was a lot. I did play a lot of online poker, but we lived on the beach. So I'd just go to the beach and play internet poker. And there were actually a lot of U.S. people. We lived in like a big condo building, but there were people from all over the United States there just doing the online poker thing. And it was only 40 minutes from San Diego, so you just fly into San Diego and cross over. And it was a pretty convenient little deal. If I had it to do over again, I think I'd have lived in Playa, though.
All right. And then you also lived in Costa Rica. Was that also to play online poker?
So I didn't live. I actually just went and visited a friend down there for a week. But yeah, I went down there for a week just to check it out and visit a friend one time. But that was the extent of my Costa Rica days. That was like 2014.
So what's your question for us?
My question is not that I would know anything about this whatsoever in my past life when I wasn't on the clean living. But when I was in Costa Rica, I was told that you could buy grams of cocaine for as low as $20 a gram. And I want to ask, why was cocaine so much cheaper in Latin America than it is in the United States?
I think that's basic economics, supply and demand.
Supply and demand, it's a lot closer to the source.
Yeah. And the risk of getting there is not nearly as high. I don't think it has nearly as high of confiscation rate.
Yeah, I would say Colombia and then maybe Peru is where the majority of the world's cocaine comes from.
Yeah.
Would you say it would be easier? I mean, obviously you're playing with fire if you make decisions like that. Now I want to paraphrase that to not get in trouble here. But would you say it would be less risk of the fentanyl and the stuff being spiked if you get it closer to the source?
That's something I don't know.
I don't know.
I have no idea. Yeah.
I think in Bolivia, small amounts of cocaine are legal. And if that's the case, then there's probably a much higher chance that it's not going to be cut with anything. When something is legalized, it usually becomes cleaner. There's a famous bar in Bolivia where you just go to the bar, you can buy drinks, and you can also buy grams of coke. What's it called? Let me see. So
you can just buy grams of blow at the bar and just sit there at the bar and do blow?
Yeah, it's called Route 36.
Interesting.
Although it says Route 36 is an illegal pop-up lounge bar located in La Paz, Bolivia, where cocaine is served by the gram on a silver platter, along with the cocktail of your choice. So I guess it's still illegal, but...
Hunter S. Thompson just nutted in the grave.
Yeah.
Seems like his absolute shit.
Yeah. I mean, I remember someone telling me, they're like, dude, I went to Colombia. The Coke was so good. I did a line and fell asleep. He was like, that's how you know it's the good stuff.
All right.
I don't really know how that checks out.
Well, the more you know. Clearly, I'm on nothing but the clean living now. But I just, wondering.
Yeah, no,
for
just sure.
checking the economics, and I was just curious about that from my time down there.
Yes, they have like narco tourism in Colombia, and one of the tours you can apparently sign up for. They blindfold you and they bring you to a cocaine factory in the middle of a jungle where you can see how they take coca leaves and turn it into cocaine.
I would absolutely love to do that.
Yes, even though you're not a cocaine guy.
I'm not a cocaine guy. I've never
just
done any. The only drugs I ever do is weed.
Yeah.
Like I've never even done shrooms or anything. But I would love to go.
It would be fascinating stuff.
Yeah. I think my wife would murder me if I said I was going to go. Mm-hmm. But that is something that I would like to check out. So if you're in the area in Chicago and you're making cocaine, let us know. We'll come out.
Yeah. I would also just like to try chewing coca leaves, because that's something that the indigenous people have been doing for thousands of years.
It just gives you the tingles.
It gives you the tingles. Apparently it's good for high altitudes, which a lot of Peru is. So the people like climbing mountains, they'll be chewing the leaves, and it maybe helps expand your blood vessels or something, but it gets more oxygen into your system. So it's used for that, and it's kind of more just like a light cup of coffee effect that you're feeling from chewing the leaves. And
Man, I would have loved to have that when I was deployed.
Yeah,
Walking around doing that.
But where were you deployed?
Iraq, like looking for IDs and stuff.
Yeah. I don't think you see cocoa leaves too much outside of South America.
Oh, no, definitely not. I'm just saying if I could have a cargo pocket full of them while I was on a little jaunt, that'd be fun.
And that, I mean...
Instead of a can of Lucy's in my pocket, I got a little bit of cocoa leaves.
And cocoa leaves are all natural, so you're not going to have to worry about fentanyl if you're just chewing on some leaves.
I would like to try. I would like to try the leaves. I wouldn't do the cocaine, but the leaves sound. I mean, originally cocaine was in Coca-Cola, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was.
Very trace amounts, but yep.
Mm-hmm. And you used to be able to just go to your local pharmacy and get some cocaine.
Mm-hmm. Morphine too.
Yeah, morphine. I think cocaine was popular amongst housewives back in the day, because do a little bit of coke, clean the house.
Finger blast yourself and your husband.
Yep.
Your husband comes home.
You call it a day.
Yeah, that's a good Tuesday.
That's great.
Get yourself a new dishwasher.
Yeah.
Knock the cobwebs off and get after it.
Cook a meal for your family.
Mm-hmm.
Not eat it. Just push the food around the plate.
Yeah. You don't have to eat it. So
you look skinny, honey. Why? You've lost a little weight. My appetite hasn't been the same.
Well, Mintz, I'm proud of you for getting kind of sober.
Cali.
Stay on the straight and narrow-ish. Yeah.
Relatively.
Cali
it's Cali sober. No booze.
Yeah.
No booze, no blow. Is the premise of it.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's the key to a long, successful, happy life.
There you go. Well, thank you for having good luck. I mean, I can't wait to follow this. This is going to be. I love the premise of it, and this could go anywhere.
Yes, and we'd be happy to have you back on for this segment anytime. So, if you ever have a question, a little curious about something, feel free to pop back in.
You got it.
Yep. Thanks, Mintz.